Hi class. So this week I learned that the more I learn, the more disturbed I am. We already know that the media focuses on sex trafficking more than any other form of human trafficking. And when they do talk about people being exploited, it's usually those who have come into the country illegally. And I have to wonder if the reason those are allowed to be highlighted is because it's the result of something that is outside of society's control. In other words, these individuals put themselves at risk by coming here illegally, or youth put themselves at risk by running away from home due to dysfunction in the family. I actually believe we need to think about human trafficking as it is allowed to happen in our country through the Department of Immigration. Many people are allowed into the United States on work visas. In order to obtain these visas, they must have identified an employer before receiving their visas. If the Department of Immigration can conduct home visits to verify that marriages were not for the sole purpose of providing legal means of remaining in the U.S., then why are visits not being conducted to work sites and residences of those on work visas? We provide no preparation period for them. Why can't we at least give them an informational hour that advises these people on what their rights are? Instead of that, we turn them over to people that will exploit them. Well, we know that they may not be getting the pay they earn. We also know that their employer is reporting and paying the required tax payments on their behalf. Do they not have the right to some form of introduction to their rights as taxpayers? In The Slave Next Door, we heard the story of Ruth, who worked for a wealthy family. Ruth cooked, cleaned, took care of the children with whom she was expected to sleep with. Ruth was beaten by both the husband and the wife. When the police were called out by the neighbors due to Ruth's screams, the husband and the perpetrators were allowed to translate Ruth's broken French to the police. They made it appear that Ruth was mentally challenged, and they ended up taking her into a mental institution where she was further traumatized through sedation and having her limbs bound. When a translator was finally located, Ruth was still under sedation and unable to explain the circumstances. Ruth's perpetrators were actually allowed to pick her up and take her back. Where was the translator when the police arrived? Why were her perpetrators allowed to speak for her? I believe that the law enforcement and medical attention she received did a lot more to traumatize Ruth and tighten the shackles that the family already had on her. Lastly, in social work practice with survivors of human trafficking, they mentioned a New York law charging youths under 17 engaged in sex work for their own attempted statutory rape. Now, statutory rape is non-forcible sexual activity with someone under the age of consent. Statutory rape is a law to protect people that are under the age of consent. The youths who the laws determine are not old enough to make an informed decision. So I thought to myself, this is ridiculous. If I'm not old enough to make this decision or at the age of consent, I'm probably not old enough to attempt a criminally prosecutable crime. Finding this data so preposterous, I researched laws in New York and throughout the United States, and thankfully I found no such law. It may be there, but for me, not finding it, thankfully, took a little bit of steam out of my outrage. Thankfully, but it's still small consolation to the outrage that grows the more I continue to learn in this class. Thank you.